3 dealerships, count them, 3 dealerships could not find the battery drain on this Jeep, but we did. Let's find out what it was. Let's get started. This is a 2018 Jeep Grand Cherokee with the 3.6 V6. This customer came all the way from Illinois, 2 or 3 states away, to finally get the answer. And we have the answer. 3 dealerships couldn't service this person's vehicle and figure out what was wrong. We'll find out today. It's a recurring theme that I'm seeing. Is not so much ability that's the issue, it's time use, or the usage or the loss of time to find out what was wrong. So before we dive into it, let's take a look around this vehicle and check it out. Here's our Grand Cherokee with its nice grille. It's in very good condition. The entire vehicle is. The customer's here to get the final nail in the coffin. It's been a long-going problem to figure out this issue. It's got some dust on it. They drove, like I said, all the way from 2 or 3 states away, so yes, it's a little dirty. So it's got a nice roof rack, also a nice receiver hitch there. As we come around to the side, oh wow, that tire looks really low. We need to get some air in that tire before we do anything else, Mrs. Wizard.
Yes, we do.
It's a good thing Fantic, sponsored today's video, sent me their X9 Ultra tire inflator. I know you guys are thinking, doesn't the shop have an air compressor? We do, but it's really overkill for filling a simple tire. Plus, this compressor is just over 8 pounds. It's so much easier to bring this over to the car than it is to get out all these long air hoses. This X9 Ultra can refill 25 tires from 30 psi to 35 psi on one charge. Or it can fill 4.5 tires from 0 to 35 psi. What makes this tire inflator so much better than others is it also has a 92 watt power station with 65 watt USB-C fast charging that will keep your devices charged whether broke down on the side of the road or when you're out camping. It also has a bright light that will help you see when working on your car or when Junior Mint is playing with the light switches. Junior Mint! It's so easy to use. All I have to do is set the desired PSI and it will automatically stop when it reaches that PSI. It refilled this tire in just 38 seconds. Look how accurate it is. Plus, it can also refill your bike tires, basketballs, footballs, and it easily fits in the trunk of your car. You need to make this your next addition to your garage. Click on the links in the description, select Amazon coupon, and use my code CARWIZARD for a total of 30% off the Fantic X9 Ultra Tire Inflator. That's right, 30% off. Now let's get back to this Jeep. Before I get Danielson out here and we talk about all the steps we went through to find and isolate the problem, let's talk about the experience this customer has had. It's a really strange drain. It doesn't just do it every single day. It can be sometimes where it's only once a week. They'll come out to their vehicle and it's flat dead. And 2 or 3 days go by after they get it jumped and charged back up. It'll go 2 or 3 days happy, no trouble at all. You never really know when is it going to be the next time that you come out to your car and it's dead. The customer actually had a trickle charger on their battery just to survive so they could get by and go to work every day. And sometimes they would get off of work and it would be dead anyways. As you can imagine, everything at a dealership is time. If it's going to take an entire week to get this thing to act up, they're not going to spend that time on your car. They're not. They're going to drive it a couple times. Maybe overnight they might check it out. And the next day they come in, if it starts right up, they'll say, couldn't reproduce the problem, kick this car to the curb. I should say Jeep, it's an SUV. Kick it to the curb. We're done. This happened a couple of times. The third time the dealership said they might have fixed something or did an update or something or other. It was the next day, the customer said it was flat dead again. They just like, I've got to get this fixed. I love this vehicle. What do I do? Finally, they heard about Omega Auto Clinic. They had it brought here. And it took us quite a while. It was a whole week that went by. Danielson checked this over. It would not act up. And just as we almost threw in the towel ourselves, we called the customer, was going to tell them, come get your Jeep, it just won't act up. That very day, that very morning, it was flat dead. And it kept on doing it. It stayed doing it. And it was great because we found out what was wrong. Now think about that. We were willing to spend the whole week, and it's based on this one account of the customer. He said, I'm so tired of this. I'm at my wit's end. I have no choice. He said, bill me the time. I don't care if it's $1,000 just to find the problem. He said, go for it. You got the green light. I don't care. Please find it. So we spent the time. Obviously, we're not going to bill him that much, but we did have quite a lot of time into it. I'll go get Danielson and we'll talk about all the steps we went involved to find out what was wrong. And it was a tricky one. So this one was tricky, wasn't it?
Oh yeah, it was.
Very, very tricky. The first thing we did, we had to get the batteries out and see if there's an issue with the batteries. Let me show you where they're at. They're not in a very convenient place. And you heard me mention batteries as more than one. Yes, there is a small battery that's used for auto stop start, and then there is the large main battery, all underneath the passenger seat. So we charged both of those, tested them. They actually tested good, right?
Yes.
Okay, so no serious issues going with the battery or any grounds or anything over here. All the testing done there passed with flying colors. So let's go under the hood. Battery drains can really make you pull out your hair, and luckily I don't have any to pull out. But it's not difficult enough to figure out where it's coming from, but like I was mentioning to them, it only happened like once a week or every 5 days or something.
Yeah, it's very frustrating. Customer tells you that this is happening, and then the car gets here and nothing kept happening. So
yeah, it took quite a while to get it to act up. Let's go ahead and open the hood and show you some of the procedure he's used to figure that out. So you spent a lot of time right here, didn't you?
Yes. While it was not doing it, I went through the fuses, what you typically do when you're checking parasitic draws, and I didn't find anything.
So in the old days, we would use an oscilloscope like this and show us amp draw, and I'll show you that here in a minute. But we'd go through with a small pair of needle nose pliers and just pull fuses until the amp draw went away. But I have this little tool called the Amp Hound. You don't have to pull the fuses. You just go to the little metal contacts on the fuse, on top of the fuse, like this. And it shows nothing. No draw there. Go on to the next fuse. No draw there. Try another one. No draw there. Nothing going on there. And for the first week, that's pretty much all we got.
Yeah, draw all the fuses.
It was fine. There was nothing wrong. So we used this oscilloscope. You unhook the negative terminal and put it between this test lead and this test lead, so all the vehicle's power is running through this, and you measure for amps. It should be about 0.08, 0.05 or less on a healthy car. And it pretty much stayed there for most of the time. In fact, it got so annoying that this thing would go to sleep on us. It's like beep, and then we'd have to start all over again. And finally, I said, enough with the gadgets. Let's go old school on this. I went to good old Amazon and got me a standard ammeter that requires no power other than just the power going through it for testing. It goes 0 to 10 amps, and it can show tiny little deviations of draw. You can see the two terminals we used. And then you hook this up, right? We just kind of just set it there.
Yeah, at that point you can leave it alone. It's not going to turn off.
Yeah, it doesn't turn off. It doesn't shut down on you. Then you have to start all over. And we just went about our day working. And it was finally we were going to call the customer and say, we can't find it. And then it acted up.
Yes.
And started acting up a lot then. So we got this little amp gauge on there, and for a little bit it wouldn't do anything. We went back to working, and every once in a while we'd take a peek over there and see if it's doing anything, and then we caught it. And it was what, like 2 amps?
About 2 to 3 amps roughly.
Yeah, solid. And then so from there, now we know it's doing it. What did you do to find out where it's coming from?
So at that point, since we actually had an amp draw, I went back to the fuse box since it was the fastest way to find an amp draw, and went back in there with the Amp Hound and went and found the draw.
And it ended up being?
The AC compressor.
The AC compressor. Now normally you would think, okay, our problem is with the AC compressor or something like that. But here's the thing about Chrysler vehicles. They have a module called TIPM, or for short we call it TIPM. It's a totally integrated power module. And it is your fuse box. Take a look, guys. So you think on the top layer you just see some relays, some fuses, and there's nothing more to this box. That's pretty much all that's there, right? Wrong. There's a circuit board, actual kind of a module inside of it that has its own set of micro relays soldered to the board. You can't replace them. And those power things like cruise control, AC compressor, lighting, all kinds of things are ran through that fuse box. It's a smart module, kind of like, huh?
Yeah, and so the fuses are on top and the relays are on the bottom. Well, most of the relays. There's some relays on top, but that makes it such a pain now.
It really is. So like if the ECM wants to turn something on, it sends a signal to the fuse box.
It does, yes.
And the fuse box says, okay, I'll turn on the AC compressor. Here's the problem. It's turning it on without anything telling it to do so. It's turning on the AC compressor. Occasionally, it'll turn it on all the time. It'll just stay on. So like, even with the car off, fully gone to sleep, the clutch was fully engaged, huh?
And yes, I even disconnected the module that turns on the AC compressor, which is inside. It's the AC control module, sends a signal to this, then this turns on the AC. I disconnected that and the amp drop did not go away. So that tells me that the problem is isolated to that module too.
Right. So likely there's a micro relay or something inside of there that's triggering it to trigger, and it shouldn't be, telling the AC compressor to engage. There's one thing inside the interior that actually threw us for a loop. It's the USB charging port. Let's go take a look at that. When we started seeing the amp draw, we thought it possibly could be from the USB port charging area because they were lit up blue all the time, and we were seeing some amp draw coming from it. But it fooled us. It actually wasn't that. It was the AC compressor all along. I've seen this problem a lot in Chrysler minivans, or lots of 05, 6, 7 Chrysler vehicles with TIPM problems. It's a very, very common issue. I don't know why a dealership wouldn't find it, but the only fix for this is to have this replaced, and it needs to be programmed at a dealership. I wish they would have found it there. So one way you verify that is you physically unplugged the connector to the AC clutch, and what happened then?
Then the draw went away because there was no load.
Right. So the actual windings that used to magnetize the clutch was the 2 amp draw.
Yes.
That was what was drawing it down. And whatever relay, whatever's going on in there would only do that once or twice a week whenever it decided to. It was very, very hard to find. All right, thanks Daniel-san for showing us the steps involved. So before you go back to your break, we'll let you guys know there's a really sweet video on Daniel-san's channel called Daniel-san. There's a link in the description below. It's a 240SX, huh?
Yeah, it's my new headache. So
Your new headache.
Definitely check it out.
It's what's like a dead car to now a living car, huh?
It's been sitting for 20 years.
You definitely want to go check out how he got it running again. Link in the description. Go check it out, guys. I'll let you go back to break. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Battery drains can drive you to the brink of insanity. And that's where this customer was at. They were literally at the brink of a breakdown. They were so tired of it. But here's some things that you can check before you take it to a shop. Make sure you don't have any accessories like plugged in USB radar detectors, or charging your phone, or Bluetooth adapters for your radio, or different things. I've seen that happen many times where that's all it was. And the customer gets stuck with a diagnosis bill, and all they had to do was unplug that one thing and the drain would have went away. So make sure to check things like that first. This can also happen where you have a perfectly running vehicle with no battery drains, and then you go have a third-party item installed like a backup camera, or an alarm system, or a remote start, or an aftermarket stereo with big amps. And all of a sudden your car starts draining and you have a dead battery and it's really pissing you off. What's the last thing you just did? That might be where you need to look in that area. In this scenario with this here, this was a tough one. This took a technician to figure it out. I've actually worked on cars in the past that had similar issues, and the customer replaced over $2,000 worth of parts thinking, well, maybe it's that, maybe it's that. That's not the answer, guys. You got to have a knowledgeable technician check it over and get the answer. It's much cheaper. Now, just normal everyday use of the HVAC system did not cause this. It was also not a neglect of maintenance or anything like that. It had nothing to do with those items. It was strictly failed electrical components inside the TIPM. Just the TIPM, by the way. There have been times in the past on older vehicles, like an old minivan with tons of miles, where we can cut the wires going into the TIPM and run our own separate relay, just those wires that deal with that circuit only. and it works. But I would not want to do that with this customer really, because if the TIPM's on its way out, what else is going to fail? What's next? You can't just keep cutting wires and bypassing it. It really needs to go to a dealership and have a new TIPM installed and have it programmed to this vehicle. I have a friend who runs a shop not too far from here who may be able to program this. All they do is domestic vehicles. That's it. So they're able to have the specific connections and software and things to do programming. He might be able to do it, but we work on everything from Audis to Rolls-Royce to Lamborghinis to Jeeps to... There's no way I can program for that many vehicles. And I may need to program for this vehicle, something like this, once or twice in a year. It's just not worth buying all that equipment. I'm not interested in it. So I'll give my friend a call, see if they can get this programmed. If they can, we can get it solved here. Otherwise, it will go back to the dealership. However, we now have the answer. Why does this keep killing the batteries at such random times? The AC compressor is being engaged improperly at wrong times by the TIPM. If you're curious what kind of tools we use, just like the amp hound we showed you today, we use in the shop, check our Amazon affiliates link in the description below. If you purchase anything there, we get a small cut and we really appreciate it. Click on Danielson's channel down below as well to go see the video on his 240SX, how he resurrected it from 20 years of death. And also make sure to hit the subscribe button here because we have so many more videos to come. Thanks for watching.